So instead of just directly jumping into the coding and all that, so I want to give a very clear introduction on the path forward. So why are we doing this? What is the comparison between the existing systems that we have? So I'm just sharing one of the architectural pattern, a hybrid pattern. You need not worry about that, but I'll just go to the introduction. So what you need to actually know when you're actually jumping into this Azure world, right? So you should at least have some basics with respect to the current Azure platform. So Azure as such, you know that it's a Microsoft cloud computing platform and which offers a very wide range of offerings. When I say offering, so in your day-to-day business life, right, clients that you work with and all, so what they try to do, so they try to actually set up some infrastructure within, and then they try to actually purchase the servers, the compute engines and all that. But that kind of a methodology, or I should say that kind of a fashion has changed. Just like 20 years back, 10 years back, this was the case. Like clients used to go to the actual marketplace. There used to be some kind of a sale with respect to servers. They purchase the infra setup, and one server admin used to do the setup and everything. But now you know the changed world, right? So just by a click of a button, we'll be able to spin up the infrastructure that is required. Okay, so and this is all happening because of the cloud advancement in the clouds that we are cloud technology that we have. So one such offering by Microsoft is Azure, and we also have some other counterparts like AWS, and also if coming to the big data and all that, we have Cloudera. So there are many vendors, but we will be dealing with Azure Data Factory, which is a Microsoft offering. And it's good that you know some basics with respect to how in the real world, how to access, how to create resources and all that. But just remember, this is like should be like if you are not already aware of it, it should be some kind of a self study that you can do, and just gain some basic concept of what is Azure and what are the different service offerings that is having and all that. Okay, and I'm assuming like you're already a little familiar about what is database, what is tables and all that. And you should be at least have some basic idea on tables and relations, performing joins and all that. So that's the basic expectation. But if there are anyone who is specifically looking out for more kind of information, or you need something specific on that, we can deal that separately. But as a prerequisite, what I will say is we need some basics of Azure and as well as some introduction on the databases that you have. Okay. Now, coming to the actual, jumping into the actual, what is the data factory and all, right? So you all, so as I was explaining now currently, so we have concept about the on-premise systems. So when I say on-premise, so it is in your premise. That means in your client premise, that that infra and all that. So that is what we called as an on-premise system. Okay. Now, but what is data factory? I mean, Azure Data Factory, right? So, like actually, the name says, so it basically a kind of a Azure. When I say Azure, it's a cloud. So it's a cloud PaaS offering. So it is giving us a platform saying that, okay, I'm going to give you, so Azure is going to say that, okay, I'm giving you a platform where you can actually play with the data, right? And what I mean by playing with the data, so you can orchestrate and automate. So basically, there'll be number of processes in the actual real world, like bringing in from the data from different tables or different sources. So right, so what it actually does, okay, what it does is it tries to actually go orchestrate. That means, okay, this particular activity has to happen in this manner, and in an automated fashion. So that is how it kinds of a main functionality, I should say, that it will orchestrate and automate. So these are some of the very basic points that why we are going for we need to have an introduction on why we are going for data factory. Okay, and first thing is it's a cloud based PaaS offering, platform as a service. So that is what is the meaning of PaaS. And I also explain what is an on-premise system. Okay, so you have to understand what is an on-premise system in contrast to the cloud. Okay, when I say on-premise system, it is like the infra which is set up in the premise of client. Think it that way. Okay, but data factory is a cloud-based platform as a service. That means, so this is the contrast that we have. This is a cloud and this is on-premise. So everything is hosted on cloud with respect to data factory. So this particular concept should be clear to you, that the client on-premise system and as well as cloud. Okay, so I'll just take a quick pause. So is the concept about the data factory cloud, is that clear, or do you have any particular question with respect to that? Okay, I think yeah, you're good enough, so that uh, yeah, I will just proceed. uh, okay, so next, coming to the next set of functionality to understand what is more about data factory. So what this data factory does, it does a kind of an integration. So just if I show you, okay, this particular pattern. So if you see this box around this, so it tries to, there are some different activities that I'm showing you here. There are some flat files we're trying to bring in, and what this data factory in the middle doing. So it is trying to integrate. If you see, it is trying to integrate to the storage. It is trying to integrate with the target data warehouse. It is trying to integrate with the other SSIS integration runtimes, and it is trying to integrate with the SQL. So this is where the functionality of integration or the data integration comes in. So basically, you're trying to integrate different sources that are there. So in the practical world or in the real world scenario of client asking you to, okay, come on, Mr. A, I want this data which is there in the SharePoint, and I want to push that into one kind of a table. So what are we doing here? We are trying to integrate with SharePoint. We are trying to integrate with the target database. So this is how the integration works. So this is what the data factory does. Okay. Now I'm going a step ahead, where I'm saying that data factory also does data transformation. Okay, see, these are all the things which are like a very basic like think of a scenario like client says, okay, this is my business logic, that whenever some value pops in within a table in a row, saying that it is giving an option as some value like a number or something, and that should be translated into a some other value, right? Like a product ID and a product name. Okay, where we are getting a product ID in one of the table, and you have to translate that as a name. So what is happening here? So basically, we are transforming, taking that value, transforming that into a new value, and pushing it out into a table, and finally that is being used as a in the reporting. So what is actually happening here? So we are actually transforming the data based on the business logic that is defined by the client. So that is where uh, is one of the functionality of data factory. And these four things have to be kind of a little clear in your mind, that when we are anytime working with the data factory scenario. Okay, so first important thing is about the cloud based PaaS, so platform as a service. And what it actually does an orchestration. When I say orchestration, it it kind of goes, interacts, and it kinds of automates, like, okay, for this time it should happen, and this time this trigger should happen. So that is where we are defining, performing some kind of an orchestration and automation, and then what it is actually doing, it is trying to go to different sources and targets and trying to bring in the data from one area to the other area. And the transformation, how the data should be transformed based on the different business logics that are defined by the client. So this is a very quick introduction of what is a data factory. And if you have any further questions or any doubts, you can just ask me around that. Okay. So, and yeah, is anyone having any doubt? Okay.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a one doubt.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm working as a Power BI developer, uh,
Hmm.
uh, but I want to move the data Azure ADF. But I don't have a basic much knowledge in database. Only basic knowledge. That is enough for the.
Exactly. Yes, that should be good enough, because you are saying you're already a Power BI developer, correct? So
Yeah,
meaning like
yeah,
you should be having a very basic view of what is a report. You can try to at least visualize some data, right? Basically, that is
yeah,
there in the table in the backend, and you're able to
yeah,
see that. And this will
yeah,
this kind of a ADF can help you in actually understanding how that data is coming in. So basically, when we say orchestration and all that, so in your client space, you might need to understand how it is actually coming from the source, and ultimately you will be taking your source as something like, it could be a file, it could be a table or something, right? So it would be
yeah.
helpful in that scenario.
Okay. And according to, but Azure Data Factory means it is belongs to data engineering department. But I am working as analytics. It is okay to move.
Yes, absolutely. See, it is always important that you have an end-to-end knowledge of what is happening, and that would actually help you in understanding more of the architecture behind it, right? So that would certainly be helpful with respect to understanding what's the actual backend that is happening, instead of just going for the front end part that you are currently working on.
Okay. And according to database, only joins and what other I know only basic knowledge only. But in the Azure Data Factory, I listened about it. It is a ETL tool in the cloud.
Correct.
Uh,
Exactly.
okay. And is there any coding in Azure Data Factory?
Coding with respect to see, you're saying like you have at least a basic background of the database, right? Like you're saying
Yeah,
you're a Power BI developer, and you have a basic, like suppose if there are two tables, you have to perform a simple joins and all that.
yeah,
So that is
yeah.
what we need to at least have some basic with respect to the SQL scripting, right? So which is kind of
Sequence.
a, you can, yes, the SQL that we have,
Mm,
right? So now
mm,
suppose if someone says that, okay, bring in the data
mm,
by joining two tables and all that, right? So in that scenario, we will be able to, you should be able to understand what is happening in the backend, uh, connecting to the databases, performing that query writing and all that. See, this particular query, you might have
mm.
to take it and put it in the ADF so that that will serve as a source. So at least the basic part of it, you should be I mean, if you know that, it is a very advantageous, and possibly uh, that will be helpful in understanding the actual backend that you are working. And also in the ADF part, this is the level of coding that is expected. Okay, so basically a little scripting with respect to the SQL.
Okay.
Okay.
In this course, in this course, will you cover the data bricks,
Yes, data
data
bricks,
source?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So basically the notebooks that we have, and if there is any particular transformation, how can we do that from the Databricks activity?
Okay.
Okay, just like I mentioned, it actually orchestrates. So basically it will also orchestrate the Databricks notebooks. Okay. So with this, I'll just
Okay.
proceed in
Okay. Understood.
kind of understanding. Yeah. Okay. Uh, So just before I was saying like this is a cloud offering, right? So we should also understand the fact that earlier we used to have something called SSIS, and even now we have something called SSIS. So which is nothing but we call it as the SQL Server Integration Services, and this is also kind of an on-premise offering where it works in a similar way, and I should say is the cloud version of SSIS is nothing but ADF. So the same functionality of orchestration, data integration, and transformation we used to perform earlier using the integration services, and that is now transformed in such a way that it is now offered in cloud. So we need to understand the history behind this to understand what are we actually having the advantage on cloud. So that's the reason I had it's a very brief introduction of what is the on-premise version of this cloud, on-premise version of the cloud, right? So this is nothing but SSIS. Um, so the other important thing is see nowadays what is happening is everything is kind of getting shifted into cloud environment, no matter whether it is a small file storage or whether it is a small database that they want. So everything is more of like a very quick, suppose if a client wants to um, have some storage, right? So he is not buying any hard disk and all that, he's not maintaining any kind of a compute instance to manage all that. What he will do is he will just go to his actual Azure portal, and he will try to spin up he will try to create one container or one storage space, and that itself will serve as the file storage, or we call them as blobs in Azure. Okay, so they kind of helpful in storing the different types of data. Okay, so instead of the traditional method, they are going into a cloud based system. So what is actually happening here, why I'm saying this is uh, the clients or the new business is actually leveraging on this entire cloud ecosystem. Okay, so when I said cloud ecosystem, so this Azure Data Factory or Azure SQL or the blobs that I'm talking about, right? So if you see a very simple diagram, so this is one kind of a ecosystem that we have, like the storage of Azure, and then the Azure data warehouse, and there could be on-premise systems, but there is a very big cloud ecosystem which is built around, and the ADF is the right way of leveraging that, because everything is on cloud, right? So that will actually leverage, and uh, we can have seamless connectivity when we are on cloud. When the entire sources and targets are on cloud, we can have some kind of a seamless connectivity, and that is how it is actually leveraging on the cloud ecosystem. Okay, and it is also kind of a backward compatible. So this particular point I will revisit at a later point of time in the course, why I am saying it is backward compatible. So now there could be the actual scenarios in your organization or anything where the people are trying to move from one system, that means the on premise or at the existing systems into cloud. Okay, so in this scenario, what the business demands is there could be some time that they will say, okay, our ETLs or our data transformations, they should still work, right? So that means um, whatever process that is currently running, that should actually be backward compatible, and that is where even I will try to explain that in a later scenario on what how this actually works. But Remember that these are ADF also gives us that opportunity of being backward compatible, so that it is also in sync, or uh, we can bring out the older legacy systems that we have, right? So it is backward compatible. This applies. Why? Because this applies during the scenarios like you'll have some existing systems and you wanted to actually transition from an existing process or an existing on-premise system into cloud. That is where it is helpful. And coming to the different versions that we have in Azure Data Factory, just like how we are having softwares versions and all that, right? So similarly, some time back, like almost 5 6 years back, there was this initial version. But afterwards, we have a version V2, which is the latest one, and this is most. I mean, it is equipped with most of the features like the data flows and all that, and it is ever evolving, right? And it's a major release, and we call it as Data Factory V2. So remember, so if there is something on what are the different versions available in the older, I mean, I should say older in the sense, 5 6 years back, we used to have only a V1 version, but now we have Azure Data Factory V2. Okay, the current version is Azure Data Factory V2. Okay, so these parts, I think you should be clear with this four. Why are we actually doing this? And I just explained them about the prerequisites, and I'll just go into slightly next level, or I should say what are the different Azure Data Factory elements. So these are like a very fundamental concepts that you need to understand. And if anyone is already working in integration, SSIS systems and all that, they will be able to kind of relate what is this I'm talking about. Okay, so yeah, fine. In the actual real world scenario, right, what can be the case? Okay, let us take one case, like the client came to you and they said that, okay, you have some SQL server, okay, and I want uh, the data in one particular table A or table B, and that the output of the table A should be pushed into some kind of an file output for some other consumption. Okay, so this is the actual scenario. So what are we actually trying to do here? We are trying to move some data here, right? We are trying to move some data. Nothing but there is some kind of a data movement that we need. What is a data movement? There is a source defined, there is a destination defined, and these are the suppose take a case like a SQL server, and destination is a file output. So this is a very very simple scenario. Okay, just to make you understand, but the things can be a little complex in the actual real world. But just to do for the namesake, uh, that we need to understand the basic concepts here. I'm just trying to put in this scenario here. Okay, now we are saying that we are trying to move some data. Now, for anything, we have to first define what is source, what is destination, right? And so when I say source, so a source can have a connection, right? So basically, okay, I am saying SQL Server. Okay, what is that SQL Server? Where is it present? And I should give some name. There will be a SQL Server name and all that. So a very basic of it, I'm trying to define what is source. So when I say that I'm defining a source, I'm actually defining a linked source here, linked service here. So that means the linked service. First, we need to define the linked service. Okay. Next, within this linked service, okay, okay, now we are saying like, okay, I know where is the SQL server. Okay, I know where is the source, but I wanted to know what is the data that we are trying to export. Okay, so in this scenario, I'm trying to say, let us export from table A. Okay, and from the table A, what are we actually trying to define? Okay, there is some data or there is some data set. Okay, and we need to be in a position to define that data set first. Okay, now we have defined a linked service which is nothing but the connection, and we are trying to define a data set which is actually the data of table A. Okay, so why I am saying this because these are a very basic things that we need to understand. So that is first the linker service and the data set. Okay, now we have defined a linker service which is but nothing but the connection. We have defined the data set which is nothing but what data that we are trying to move. Okay, so in real world what happens is we need to have, so movement of this data. When I say movement of this data, consider this as an activity, right? It is nothing but an activity. You're trying to move some data from source to destination, which is nothing but activity. Okay, and as I defined here, so there could be number of activities which are wrapped. Just remember these words because this will be important for your when you're trying to explain it to someone. So number of activities, okay, can be wrapped under a pipeline. So what are we actually defining here? We are defining a pipeline. Okay, and what is there in the pipeline? Activity. And what is the activity? The movement of source to destination. Okay, so there will be pipelines in Azure Data Factory. So no matter what you actually deal in Data Factory is you define a pipeline. Okay, and within the pipeline there will be number of activities. Okay, so till this point, okay, uh, what are we actually trying to do? We defined a source, we defined a destination, and we are defined a data set what needs to be moved, and this is nothing but an activity, and number of activities will be wrapped, right? So the on top of activities we have something called pipelines. So within pipelines you'll have number of activities like this, like move some data, transform some data. So these are nothing but activities. And this particular pipeline, as I'm highlighting in yellow here, you can see these are the very basic elements of Azure Data Factory. Okay, now, so when I'm saying, okay, you are connecting to the source, you're connecting to the data set, you're preparing for everything, right? So there should be some kind of a compute engine, or there should be some kind of a impetus that is coming from kind of a one compute instance to perform all these activities, right? So basically if you visualize something like a data uh, pipeline. Okay, I'll just quickly show you in one of the data pipeline here. Okay, this is nothing but a data pipeline. I will explain about the all the other things later on, but just to give you some visualization. So this is nothing but one of the pipeline. So you can see a cylindrical shape here. So just like when you actually work on, you will see this kind of a cylindrical shapes which are nothing but data pipes. Okay, okay, as I said, the data pipelines will have number of activities and these are triggered, and then there should be some kind of a compute engine or compute instance which actually performs this kind of orchestration, right? So basically you'll have some data, so that means they'll have some storage. So for everything for everything with respect to compute, there is something called integration runtime. Okay, remember that there is one compute which is actually running in the background of all this data sets, pipelines, which is actually coordinating with the pipelines and performing these activities. Everything for everything, we have something called as integration runtime, which is nothing but the compute part of it. Okay, remember that integration. There are number of integration runtimes which we can discuss in detail about integration runtime, but as such, remember that when you are working on-premise, like on client system, you purchased a server, you purchased, there'll be a processor inside it, there'll be a hard disk inside it, so you have that compute with you, right? But in this we are on cloud, so that means there should be some kind of a compute on the cloud, which is nothing but the integration runtime. Okay, and the next part is, okay, now you have created a pipeline. Okay, so you created an activity and you have wrapped it into a pipeline, and there should be some kind of an automation, right? So the client will say, okay, come on, I just need that data, say every morning or maybe every hour or every week they should run it so and so time, right? So what is actually happening here? So we are trying to actually automate it. So that means we are actually automating the trigger. What is the trigger? The trigger of the activity. That means the trigger of the pipeline. So we'll have triggers which can be scheduled, which can be planned out, depending upon the need that we have. So if I have to just compare, if you already know the SQL Server agent job, for whom who do not know, please do not panic. So for the people who already know who on the SQL Server, so there'll be something called SQL Server agent, and which actually takes, which is kind of the same behavior. We'll have something called triggers. So job schedules and all that, right? So we call them here as trigger. Just remember trigger as something which is kind of a automation that we can perform by scheduling the triggers. Okay, so the data factory as a whole, these are a very key elements. Okay, when you start working on ADF, this is what you will actually work on a daily basis. Okay, the integration runtimes will be there. Okay, and you have to define activities, and on top of activities you'll have pipelines. And what are they actually doing? They're trying to connect to the different connection, the SQL connection, the linked service, right? And then we try to create a data set out of it by extracting data from one table A or a table B or whatever. So this is one important concept that we need to be aware and be clear, so that we can move ahead into the next set of things. Okay, I'll just take a pause for now and check if anyone having any further questions on this particular basic ADF elements. Okay, okay, I will take this as a no and I will just proceed. But yeah, you can just certainly, it is just not this particular session. You can come back to me and we can certainly discuss. Or if you, mm, okay, fine. I think, yeah, even if you have any particular questions, you can also keep it in the chat. I will revisit whenever I'm just taking a pause. Even now, if you have any further questions, you can definitely just put your messages in. Okay, with this, I will just proceed to the next set of things that I have. Okay, now what we'll see is, so now you already understood uh, the basic part of what is happening uh, with respect to the data factory. I had given a brief comparison of the on-premise system as well as the current cloud offering. Okay, now I'll take a small example and I will try to show a demo of that. Okay, so think of a scenario like there is a kind of a real-time scenario that a client had come back to you saying that, okay, Mr. A, I am having one server which the data gets updated on a daily basis. I want you to kind of create an output file so that that file can be picked up by someone from the business and they can open it and check that data on a daily basis. Okay, so this is the case. So what is the source here? We are saying that it is some kind of a SQL source. Okay, and now what is the target here? So they are saying like it is some kind of a file. So that means you need some kind of a disk or some kind of a blob. So when I say disk, I'm talking about storage. So when I when I have to translate that storage in the cloud platform, it is nothing but blob. Okay, um, so I'll just show you one as I was showing you this. So this is one scenario. The Azure storage is nothing but a blob. And what is there here? We have a data factory and it's trying to push the data and all that. But I just trying to indicate what is actually happening here with respect to the orchestration that it is trying to perform. Okay. But what is my scenario here? Okay, that's just a diagram. It's like a pattern, architectural hybrid pattern. But what is my case here? Okay, what I am trying to do is I'm just trying to push some data, creates have some data in SQL server. I'm trying to push it into a blob. Okay, let us see how we can quickly do it in the cloud way. So now, in a relatively traditional case, okay, to perform this, you need the actual server, or I should say, the actual compute. At least your computer, your personal computer, you need to do demo or just to show a POC to your client. You need that, but in real cloud world, so we don't need all that. We just need a browser. Okay, so I'm just trying to introduce to you the actual workspace, or I should say we call this as a canvas. Okay, we call this as a canvas, and you can actually see here the whatever I told you, right? The activities, the pipelines, the data sets and all that, you can actually see it here, right? So these are the basic elements and you are able to see what I just defined to you. And this is the actual cloud data factory interface. Okay, I think if you nobody had already seen this, you might have already seen some screenshots if you did some basic investigation. But I should I'm just trying to introduce, this is the when you actually go to a portal, right? Your cloud portal that you have. Okay, that means portal.azure.com. Okay, you can clearly see that you there is a way that we can create a resource, but in the interest of time, I've already created one kind of a ADF data factory just to showcase to you. Okay, we will kind of understand that basic, and then we'll try to uh, in the next upcoming sessions we'll be able to create them and then go ahead. Okay, but as a quick demo, what I did was, so as I said, I created a storage. So if you could see, there is this storage account. Okay, and at the same time, I have some tables which are defined in the Azure SQL world. So in the Azure SQL, I'm just having some data. I have some table. Okay, so I have some data here. If you just fire that query, you should be getting some results here. Okay, maybe somehow it is not responding here, but I can just certainly refresh. Okay, let us wait for that to come. Okay, it is having some problem. Okay, anyways, I've just defined some database here, okay, which is nothing but SQL database, and I also showed you I have one storage account. Now the task here is, let us bring some the data which is there in this to the storage account, which is the scenario that I'm talking here. So you have SQL Server and you have a blob. I'm trying to move the data from SQL Server to a blob. I'll show you. how simple that the cloud in the ADF this is. Okay, so in within the ADF, okay, we have something called copy activity. So just I mentioned, we are trying to create a simple copy activity. So within the activities there will be number of activities. So these all activities we are going to see. So I think one of our friends, he said like he wanted the data bricks, right? So you can see here the data bricks is one of the activity here. And similarly HD inside, I mean, just like other things like if, for each, and all that, there are number of different activities that we can orchestrate or wrap it inside a pipeline. So what I did was, I simply took this copy activity here, okay, and I just defined that and I just configured it. So when I say configured it, so again I'm going back to my elements. If you see, I created a linked service here. What is linked service? Nothing but source. I'll show you the same source. So, so if I go here and if I have to show you the linked service, what I did, so we are trying to establish a SQL linked service and as well as a storage linked service. So you can see the both here. Okay, that means I'm just giving that configuration. If I click this, it will not have nothing but the what are the different cloud um, part of it, right? So this is a cloud connection string that we have. This is nothing but the linked service. And if I go to Blob, I'm just trying to give what that Blob has. What are the what is the storage account name, what is the storage account key. Okay, so basically I'm just defining that path, or I'm defining the what is that path for that, what is the storage account name. I'm just configuring all that. So this is nothing but the linked service. Now you know where is your source, where is your target. Now we need to define a data set, right? So if you click here, okay, so this is nothing but data set. I'm also going to the actual canvas of Azure Data Factory. Okay, now if you notice, there are two linked services and I'm defining two different data sets. So when I say data set, what is this data set? Okay, I'll try to just preview this data for you. Think like I'm having some kind of an employee data. Okay, in your real world scenario this can be anything, but I'm just trying to show you this um, the actual data set. Okay, and again, now we have defined the data set. Just like I mentioned, we have defined linked service, we have defined the data set. Now what is the next set of thing? It is the activity, right? So what I said, we will have number of activities and the wrapper around the activity is nothing but a pipeline, right? So what I did was, I took a pipeline. Okay, I just took a simple pipeline, I created it. Okay, and within this pipeline, so this is the pipeline that we have. Okay, and within this pipeline I am having an activity called copy data. Okay, and what this copy data does, okay, if as soon as I clicked on copy data, you can see the change here, right? Just see, observe the change. So I just clicked on copy activity and now it is actually asking to configure that copy activity. Now I'm going back. So this is my larger screen. What is happening here? As soon as I went to the copy activity, it is asking me for different options. It is showing me different options. Now let us see what is there here. Source. So it is asking me what is the source for this simple activity. So when we actually define this data sets and all that, they automatically come as a pop-ups. Okay, in the drop down, whatever data sets that we have, it will automatically come as a drop down and we have to select that respective source. So in my case, What is a source? It's nothing but SQL Server, and that is what I defined here: a SQL Server table, Azure SQL table. And I also showed you the preview of the data, a very simple form of data, just to make you understand what is happening here. And this is the simple form of data. And now I have defined the source. Now what is the next part? Define the target, which is nothing but blob. When I say blob, it is nothing but storage. Please understand that it is nothing but storage in Azure. Now, what is the, I'm going to the target. When I say target in ADF world, it is nothing but sink. Okay, so we have defined a source, we are defining a sink. What is the sink? I'm saying it is a delimited text. So you understand what is a delimited text, right? So basically any text file that we have, okay, any text file that we have. Mm, so when I say a column one, okay, and I'm giving comma as a delimiter, so that means between the column one and column two, this comma is the delimiter. So it delimits between this data. Okay, this is nothing but the delimited text. So basically I have kept it as delimited text. That means it should bring in the data and it should open as if a text file. Okay, it could be CSV, it could be a different other formats, but it should be a delimited text. And now we have defined source, we have defined sink. Now coming to the mapping, right? So basically we are saying like we have a data set. What is there in this data set? So basically the source, I have something called an ID and first name and last name. And here again in the destination also, we are having something called ID, first name and last name. Okay, so we have to define the mappings. And so these are the basic things that we need to kind of define. Okay, so that means the source, the sink, and the mapping. So these three parts, once you define in the copy activity, and I should just simply go and debug the same. So automatically there will be one integration runtime that will be started in the backend, and you can see that it has been queued. So that means Azure will try to keep this as a workload. I mean, it will be keep it as a work, and it will start queuing it. And as soon as the instance of the compute is ready, it will go and execute the same. So yeah, I just executed it in front of you that it got succeeded. We'll go and see whether that storage account, where is this? Yeah. Yes, you can see here that that particular trigger that we did, right? Now it had created a file. So that means from the Visual Studio, sorry, from the SQL Server, basically we imported this particular data that we had, right? The EMB. You can actually see it here. So if I just download, you can clearly see. I'm just downloading that file. I just opened that file. So yeah, you can see that data here. Okay, sorry. You can see that data here, the same file I had opened, and the sample EMP and the sample EMP here. So you can see the data which is there in the SQL Server is now moved into the target blob that we have defined. So whatever I just told you in theory, okay, so you can actually practically see it in the demo that I have just shown you. So what are we actually trying to do here? We had created one data pipeline, okay, and I'll just show you this. So yeah, we have created this data pipeline, which is a wrapper of the activity, and these are the data sets that are defined. And ultimately, we try to run that, and you could also see that this integration runtime, okay, auto integration runtime, this is nothing but the compute which actually perform this particular activity. Okay, so yeah, with this I just wanted to kind of take a pause, or I should say, like, we are good with the introduction of what is happening and what are the basic elements, and whatever we discussed in theory I've just tried to showcase to you in the demo that we had. Okay, uh, I'm open for questions now. I mean, maybe if you have any further questions, or yeah, you can also actually keep your questions in your chat window in case if you're unable to speak. Any questions from anyone on the actual part that you have seen, or any question whether on the relevance, whether it will be helpful to you, whether this course would be helpful to you? If you have any certain doubts, you can definitely let us know.
Hi, Harin this side. Can
Hey,
you hear
hi
me?
Harinder.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yes.
actually, I'm working as a like primary research executive, where my role is to like collect data from online surveys and then we visualize it through different visualization tools like Power BI and Tableau. So just wanted to understand ADF, how ADF will help us to like save my career in other horizon.
Right. So as you're mentioning, Harinder, that your current duty was to visualize the online part of it, right? So what are you actually doing? So if my guess is right, so basically you'll be directly giving that particular link of that particular online service, and you're fetching the data and using
Yes.
some kind of power query and some kind of a pivoting or the different steps that you perform, you basically
Yes.
transform the data, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now, an addition to that, okay, so take a case that your organization asked, okay, Harinder, it is just not the live data that I wanted to see. I wanted to see some historical patterns in that particular data. So how would you try to do that, right?
Yeah.
So in real world scenario, if you have to uh, get the historic, if you want to view the historic data, so that means you need to store that somewhere. But what Power BI does, Power BI basically shows what is live there, correct? What is there in the online
Yes. Yes.
that is visible. No, but the company had a different vision, or you had a different creative or an innovative thinking that, okay, let me analyze some patterns around this, right? Patterns around the data that I'm showcasing every day. So you might have to go for a storage. So how will you go for a storage? So that is where the ADF would come to your rescue. And using ADF, basically on a daily basis, the same online link that you're using, right? You can make use of that, create or store that data into a SQL server. Okay. And this will actually gives you an opportunity of going back in the time. Okay. Okay. On the last 3 month or this particular date, this is what we are seeing, and this is now what we are seeing currently. So you can clearly see that kind of an orchestration or anything, right, that you can perform using this ADF.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, fine. even if you are having any further questions with respect to how it is relevant to your career or how it can be useful, yeah, okay, definitely you can drop a mail also, and we can certainly take that case to case. What is that kind of a help that can, to be frank, like right, it can develop a different perspective to your existing work that you're doing. Okay, and it's like now you have to try entering into the actual cloud world. I think like many of you are already working on Power BI and all that, but what this can do is like this can add on what is the actual end-to-end process that is happening in the bigger enterprises. Okay, there can be scenario where you've been just asked to just bring in the data and all that, but within the bigger enterprises, right, like think of a scenario like a banking sector or liquid pipeline sector, or where there is some huge data, or think of a scenario where there is this one some wind turbine which is running and it is generating huge amount of data. Okay, so this is a bigger picture. Think of a bigger picture, like if you are into an enterprise, bigger enterprise, where you're working with this kind of a wind turbines, or you're working in some financial domain, you're getting a lot of data from the CRM systems that you have and all that, and you have to do some transformation mashup of the data, and then push it into a warehouse or for consumption later, whether it could be Power BI, it could be Tableau. So that's a different thing, but you need to get an end-to-end picture of what you can actually do, and what, when you are trying to actually bring in the data from different sources and trying to publish into your data warehouse or the tables that you have, right? So this will actually develop a different perspective. Okay, and certainly can be a add-on to your existing work that you are doing.
One more
Okay,
question. Currently, I'm working as
so
a
with this I am just uh, ending this introductory session, and as I said, okay,
hello.
sorry, I think someone dropped off. Is that Harinder?
Yeah, yeah. So actually, I have like few further questions.
I'm
So
not
currently,
able to hear you somehow.
can you hear me? Hi, hello.
Uh, now I can hear you. Now I can hear you. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So actually, I'm working as a primary research, as I told earlier. Uh, I just wanted to let I just
Mhm.
wanted to know what Azure Data Factory course will like help me to like explore new career opportunities. Like this course will help me to like explore new career opportunities, or it will add up in my like current
Exactly. So
role.
currently, correct. So currently, you are working as a reporting developer, if I'm right. Is that so?
Yes, yes,
So
yes,
you're basically using the data, creating reports in Tableau and all that. So,
yes.
so if I have to analyze, I mean, think about you. So you are more of there is someone who will be telling you that okay, there is data available in so and so place, and you have to
Mhm.
just develop with respect to the interface, or you need to design a dashboard, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Correct. And now there is a scenario where you need to go to the next level, right? So
Mhm,
that means you are actually trying to also get some understanding on how you are getting the data, right? And
mhm,
that how part can be a scenario where there is something in the backend which is actually bringing in the data for consumption, right? So
you're right.
in the actual scenario, you are now bringing in it from some web and all that. Okay, in the real world scenario, there could be some kind of a background process which is actually helping you this, isn't it? So
Yeah,
to understand that and to advance yourself in also think of a scenario in the particular report, Harinder, that someone had raised a question: why is this data like this, or this data is supposed to be in a different way, but you're getting this. But
Yeah.
what had actually internally happened is the actual process which is doing this, right? This there could be some issue within that. So that means you might have to go back and trace back. And how can you actually trace back? You need to understand the concept that is there in the backend. Suppose if it is defined in Azure Data Factory, right? So this
Mhm.
course will actually help you understand if you're already where is the transformation logic going wrong, right? So you'll
Okay.
be able to get the perspective on where it is going wrong. And it is just not this. As I given you one scenario, so suppose if there is a scenario that you need to go back in history and analyze few things, correct? So
Yeah.
how can you achieve that? You can achieve it by having such kind of an automation created using Azure Data Factory.
Okay. And
On
if
a daily
somebody,
basis you are actually seeing like that. Yeah.
yeah, if somebody want to start fresh in Azure Data Factory, not
Mhm.
considering that he has experience of any other field, and want to like
Yeah.
integrate ADF at their like um, at their field only. If anybody wants to like switch fresh in Azure Data Factory, what opportunities we have in this field?
So basically, ADF will open a path that you will become a Azure Data Engineer.
Okay.
Okay. So basically, when I say data engineer, right?
Mhm.
So what Azure Data Engineer. So basically, anything with respect to the data transformation and everything, right? So that particular role, if you are well understanding about ADF, so you will actually be fit for the role of data engineering, Azure Data Engineer.
Okay. So just my question is, will this course will like help us to like achieve that goal? Like we can
S-
we can be a Azure data engineer after getting this finishing this course.
So, like I said, so basically, Azure Data Factory as such, it is like an orchestrator.
Yeah.
Okay, but in fact, what happens is you need to orchestrate means you need to connect to different sources, correct?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you need to have some basics around the SQL, SQL, right?
Okay.
Structured query language. I mean, we need to understand some basic concept of database. So these are
Hmm.
all are like the basic building blocks for you to actually become a data engineer. And
Okay.
what I can say is that once you start with Azure, this
Hmm.
particular data factory, you'll automatically try to understand and try to perform some kind of an activity from your end, right? So it would be like a simple queries that you can write and you can just try to bring in the data. So that will actually give you confidence that okay, even though you're not well versed with the databases, but you can also understand and you can actually integrate it, right? You're trying to integrate, you're trying to automate the things and all that. Okay, so this will be a very good starting point for you to transition into the actual full stack data engineer.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Thank
Okay,
you. Thank you for explaining.
so perfect, sure.
Ravi,
Yes,
can
Vijay.
you hear me, Ravi? See, I have a
Yes,
one
yes, Vijay.
question. See, in SSIS, I am a SSIS developer and all the MSBA
Okay,
developer. So
perfect.
I have a question like I have an Excel file, so which
Hmm.
has to load to the destination, but from that source, I need to uh, pick the data of the next 4 to 5 rows of a cell because I have so many headers in the Excel. It is a report which comes from the business team, and I need to load the data into the table as a staging, so which I can restrict or which I can take the data from which of the point of the cell from Azure Data Factory. Is it possible? Like we can have option of in SSIS we have we can get the data
Skipping
from
rows.
which point. Yeah,
Skipping rows, right?
sorry.
You have an option, or
Yeah, yeah,
you have an option of skipping rows in SSIS. So you're trying to get the same scenario. So
yes.
certainly, yeah, there are. See, there may not be a straightforward exact configuration like that, Vijay.
Mhm.
But for sure, there will be a way around where we can manage such scenarios. For sure. Because think
Okay.
of a scenario like you are now saying that you have an Excel, right? Now,
Yes.
let us say that you have dropped that into a temporary table, okay, with the headers, okay, and we know that
Okay.
we need to actually skip the top four rows, so which we can handle it via some kind of a query on top of that existing temporary table, isn't it?
Okay. So here we have to
So
do it in a query point of
yeah,
in a
see,
query wise
there
we have to do it, but we can't handle by like in pipeline wise. Right?
yes,
That's cool.
what I will say is, see, as of now, this is maturing and more maturing going forward, okay, and for
Mhm.
each component that it has, definitely there'll be more new options or more new versions that will be developed. But as of now, if, going and getting for the exact configuration might not be the case, and definitely I can take this as a one takeaway, and I will be able to verify that for you and to understand
Okay.
if there is an option already existing. But what I can say
Okay.
is definitely there will be ways to work around such scenarios in the data factory actual scenario.
Okay. Yeah, I have another question. Like, suppose I have a different locations, like different flat files from the different FTPs. So I need to gather that in a one point and to get loaded
Mhm.
in the loop to be looped and to be loaded in my or a staging table. So
Right.
that we can achieve by SSIS. But here, any other thing is in there in this area like that.
Yes, just like how you loop in, you can also loop in the different files here. That is not a problem. If I have to show you that, so the similarly just like how you loop, right? So here also we have the looping mechanism. See, you can see this here, right? The for each that we have. So
Yes.
basically, if you go and see the configuration, so correct, and within that
Yes.
you can already perform what is that activity and within the loop in.
Okay.
So if you see
And
activity,
here
this
I can
activity, you
I
can
can
actually
connect
do
to any other
this
FTPs
to
and then can I get the different source FTPs, source flat files from the different FTPs here.
see, I think we are covering here the only the very basic here. I mean, as of this
Okay.
session, what I should say is, I mean, yeah, we can try to explore that. But as you mentioned, you're saying in that FTP side, right? So we should have that
Yes.
valid particular connection, right? So we'll
Yes.
have
Yes.
number
Yes.
of data linked services that we have. So if that linked service is available in the data factory, and for sure, this can be, suppose we need to check whether that availability of that linked service is there. So basically you're saying
Okay.
FTP site. So if
Yes.
so how to access that FTP site and all that using HTTP mechanism, or is there a separate secured mechanism that we need to basically understand. So this is
Okay.
the file system, the FTP site that we have. You're seeing my screen, right? The FTP.
Yes. 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 Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So just I'm asking like it's in any other. there is a limitation. So you can what we can do it in SSIS, then that also can do it in ADF, right?
Yes. See, maximum loads that we have in SSIS. See, SSIS is a very mature tool so far, like almost serving since last 20 years, right? So
Right.
it is matured enough to handle all kind of scenarios. Now it is moving into a
Mhm.
cloud-based world, and definitely, as I said, if it is directly not available, then definitely there will be a way to work around it. So that's how
Okay.
I
Okay.
see, and this is also kind of getting matured, and we'll have more and more options. So earlier, last 2 to 3 years, I mean, we were not having these many number of options, but now they came in. Newly they came in. See, Amazon S3 file system, even
Yes.
yeah, SFTP, HTTP.
Okay.
Okay, fine. Thank you. I think we have just over time, but yeah, and happy. Uh, uh, yeah, go ahead and enjoy the next part of the day, and happy good day to you. Um, with this, I'm just ending the session for now. But as I said, you can definitely come back to us. You can drop your email if you have any further queries or any such doubts that like Vijay or Harinder is having. You can definitely come back to us. Thank you. With this, I'm ending the session until there is nothing else.